Hi, DCC family. My name is Elton Burgest, and welcome to another episode of DCC Daily, where we share stories and insights that can keep you connected to the life of your church. My name is Elton Burgest. I'm an African-American Christian who grew up in the South, and I make art about that perspective. I think perspective is important because life has so much nuance than just the things we see on the surface. And I think being a Christian is about seeing those nuances and perspectives, sort of those grays instead of those black and whites in people, seeing the best of people and not just a result of someone's actions, just viewing them as people. And I think my art brings that perspective in. Originally, art was made for the Catholic Church. It's kind of interesting that Christian art has come to a screeching halt in terms of representation in the modern galleries and churches and how we don't show art anymore. And I think it's kind of fun to be a Christian artist, and sort of now, although art was for Christians, it's sort of flipped, and I'm sort of the rebellious force now trying to get into these spaces. This makes the Juneteenth event so special. I never seen art in a church, and I never seen people look at Christian artwork in a place of worship. And I think that was very important to me. It was a very important moment to sort of validate. And I know we're all on our spiritual journeys, and I know that we want to find purpose in our lives, and how can we help and glorify God with our talent. And that event sort of signified that, well, I was on the right track by God, because this is something I definitely talk about with God. It's fun to be able to talk about my work to Christians. Normally, I had to put in the Christian after the African American really quickly, so I have a fear of being persecuted by non-Christian artists in the art world. You know, it's kind of odd. I mean, going to the College of Fine Arts at Florida State, I felt somewhat out of my element. There weren't that many black people there, let alone black artists who were talking about Christ and following Jesus. And last thing I wanted to do was stand out for my beliefs. I was very afraid of being persecuted, and throughout my upbringing, going to college, and already feeling like I'm an outsider. So being that Christian person making Christian art, I never really embraced that till later on, because I didn't want to look crazy to other people or outside. There's nothing more frustrating than talking about Jesus and no one taking you seriously. And you kind of see what, or experience what the disciples and Jesus and what Paul felt in the New Testament. I mean, it's easy to say, to go out and tell people about Jesus in a room full of people who vibe with Christianity, but it's another thing in a room full of non-Christians to show that you believe in God. The pressure is crazy. It's insane. And I think the main thing I was afraid of was my own doubts getting the best of me. An atheist laughing and berating me with questions, and I would look like I was a part of a cult or some, I'm not sure if you felt this way, but I definitely, growing up in a Christian household, hearing atheist questions, that was the biggest fear for me, or somehow that my doubts, like there was a curtain behind me, or I wasn't subtly, like I was being manipulated into believing something. And those were like fears that I had because I didn't experience other perspectives. I think being around atheists have actually strengthened my faith, though. I think throughout my college career and being around other artists and people who didn't believe in Jesus kind of showed me perspective. My friend Marie Dahl, she was the sweetest person I ever met. And I've been around Christians my whole life, but you have a non-believer treating me like very sweet, being a very sweet person and giving me things and doing things for me and required nothing. And she kind of showed me how to act as a Christian without being a Christian or quoting scripture. I think we all agree it's really annoying for someone to quote scripture who don't really live the lifestyle. I mean, it's even annoying to God. I mean, lukewarm Christian. I mean, that's where that phrase kind of comes from. I think I've met people like that who are just sweet, but they don't know Jesus. And that actually made me want to be a better Christian. Like, wow. It's like watching a football team from, another state do things the right way, and you see that your team be horrible, and you're just like, why can't we be like that team? Like, there's no reason why we can't be like that team. We just need to do what they are doing. And I think that's important. It's important to look outside of the culture of church and Christianity to see that there's something that we are missing here. And I think my artwork is part of that journey as well, my journey through that. I think the questions I have encountered were scary at first, and it actually led me closer to God as God would reveal the answers to me. And when you think about atheist questions, I think it was fear that really stopped me from really pursuing that. But if you have true faith, you can confront questions and you can look for answers, because if you really believe in God, you know that that's truth. Then that's what you're trying to find, more understanding. Then exploring those questions gives you better understanding, and it helps you become closer to Him and puts you at ease to when someone's questioning God, you're very comfortable in your knowledge of it. When you think about questions about slavery in the Bible, who created God, bugs on the ark of Noah, you should never be afraid of questions, because the true faith welcomes questions. You will always, when you have true faith, when you believe that God is true, you have an understanding, and your frame of mind starts to change, that these questions, it's easier to find the answers. And that gets you closer and closer to God, to understanding Him. Because, everyone has questions. But I think it's important to sort of reach out and talk to people and understand where they're coming from with those questions. But also, this will help you in your study. I do feel like atheist questions should be Bible study material and not something you close your ears to. As I get older, the magnitude of what Paul and the disciples went through to spread the gospel really hits me. It makes me feel like there's no excuse for me to be afraid to say I believe in Jesus. Because although they died, there's a reason. If the New Testament taught us anything, is that our time here isn't just for us. It's for our lives to become a bridge to lead someone else to Christ. I think about my talent and how I do want to be in spaces where there aren't Christians, but I also want to be in spaces where there are Christians, but who may be treating people, who may view people differently. And I think that's a very healthy dialogue. I think it's important to talk to people and be a bridge to Christ, showing them kindness. And I want to leave you with this message. Be the bridge to Christ. Be that bridge. If you don't know someone is Christian, invite them to church. I invite my non-Christian friends to church all the time, and they say no, they say yes, but I realize that there's a reason why I'm talking to this person, or I'm in this person's life right now. So if you ever feel the urge, don't be afraid to talk to a non-Christian person. I think one of the troubling things, one of my Christian friends asked me, why am I friends with non-believers? And isn't that what Jesus did? No one believed in Him until He started doing His thing. But He had to be friends with these people first. So, it's okay to be friends with non-believers and be an influence in their lives and be a bridge to Jesus for them. Thank you for listening to this episode of DCC Daily. Keep up with our church via social media pages, our YouTube channel to access previous sermons, and our Sunday services, both in person and online.